had been entangled with Ethan's song for 12 years. How many 12 years do we even get in a lifetime? Ethan, just as you wanted, I'm returning your freedom. After leaving behind those words, I walked away without ever turning back. I checked into a hotel, turned off my phone, and buried myself in sleep. In my dream, I was back at 16, the year I first met Ethan. He was a proud, spirited teenager back then. That was also the year my parents died in a car crash, leaving behind a large compensation sum. Whoever gained custody of me would have control over that money. Genuine affection or real money? What was more sincere? I didn't know. I told the lawyer I didn't need a guardian. Just let the money sit safely until I came of age. My grandmother called me ungrateful, saying my uncle had treated me so well. My aunt excused me of being heartless. Couldn't I at least help her out? I left with a cold face, dragging my suitcase behind me. Because they had forgotten before all this. They'd all said I was cursed. That my very existence had doomed my parents to death. I transferred schools and rented a new apartment. I thought I was strong, but when I came down with a fever so intense I started convulsing and had to drag myself out to buy medicine. It was the first time I truly felt helpless and alone. That day, in a narrow and dim corridor, I met Ethan. He walked toward me, bathed in backlight, like redemption sent from the heavens. He came straight to me and I collapsed into his arms. At 16, I had already decided. Ethan was the light that pulled me out of the darkness. I was sick for nearly 2 weeks, and it was Ethan, who lived across the hall, who took care of me the entire time. After his parents learned about my situation, they treated me with great kindness too. At 16, after losing my parents and being abandoned by my own relatives, I was lucky enough to be wrapped in warmth again. I clung to that warmth, hoping to make myself burn bright with it. After I got better, Ethan took me out for a walk. We sat on the lawn and basked in the sunlight. He looked at me and smiled. "Emily," he said, "I'm your lifesaver. You owe me for that, you know." That youthful, radiant smile etched itself deep into my memory. I laughed and asked, "Well then, my lifesaver, how should I repay you?" His face turned red, and he stammered for a long while without saying another word. After I transferred, Ethan and I became deskmates. He was excellent in school. Any problem I didn't understand, he could solve, and he always taught me patiently and gently until I truly grasped it. Thinking back on that time still fills my heart with warmth. I loved the Ethan from those days, and I believed he loved me just as deeply as I loved him. But people change, love fades. The reason people can feel warmth is because the cold constantly reminds them it's there. When I woke from that uneasy dream, it was already the next afternoon. My phone was full of unread messages. I skimmed through them. Most were from friends. "Emily, you and Ethan have been together for so many years. How could you just call off the engagement like that? Such a shame. You two were the couple everyone admired. What happened?" I didn't have the strength to explain, especially when Ethan called. "Where are you?" 3 simple words, but I heard nothing but endless impatience in them. Like I was the one who had clung to him time and time again. He hadn't always been like this. Back then, every word he said to me was soft and full of affection. Just hearing him say my name could melt my heart. When did he start to change? Days, I listened as his accusations came at me like machine gun fire. "What is this supposed to mean, Emily? What did I ever do to you? You really had to humiliate me in front of all our relatives and friends. What kind of crap are you pulling now? Who are you trying to impress with that innocent act? You've always been like this. If I had known, I would never have saved you." After all these years of love, I guess he's been regretting it for years now. But even now, Ethan still thought I was just being dramatic. "I'll come see you tonight," he said. "We can regret it together, or we can watch everything shatter like a bubble. But I need to give these past 12 years an answer." He let out a cold laugh. "I had to squeeze time out of my schedule just to marry you. I told you to wait. You're the one who insisted on this timing." And then he couldn't help but add with mockery, "You wanted to get married and I agreed. What more do you want from me? How cheap I must be." After all these years of love, in the end, I became the one begging and forcing things to happen. His reluctance was written all over his voice, and I no longer had the strength to push. Yeah, I know you're busy, so forget the wedding. I'll save you the time. His low voice roared through the phone. Emily Song, do you think marriage is some kind of joke? If we're not getting married, then don't ever bring it up again. But how could there be any again after this? And now he still thought I was just being emotional. He tried to use the idea of later as bait to make me compromise. Fine. He went silent for a long time. When sound returned, it was just the beeping of the call ending. I smiled, but the curve of my lips was bitter beyond words. No matter what happened between Ethan and me, the truth was, I grew up in the Song household. Mrs. Song had always treated me kindly. Things should have a proper beginning and a proper end. I needed to give her some closure. It was around lunchtime, and we arranged to meet at a nearby restaurant. When I arrived, Mrs. Song looked visibly troubled, but the moment she saw me, she forced a smile. It made me feel even worse, especially when I saw the table full of all my favorite dishes. My nose stung with the urge to cry. She motioned for me to sit quickly and asked how I was doing. Of course I wasn't doing well, but I said I was fine anyway. She didn't speak much. She just watched me eat in silence. I hadn't eaten anything since yesterday, and my stomach was aching from hunger. I finished the meal quickly. When I looked up, I saw the warmth in her eyes. She held my hand, looking me up and down, and suddenly her eyes welled up with tears. Emily, how did you get so thin? No matter what's going on, you still have to remember to eat. That kind of love and care was something I had lost for years and just recently gotten back again. But I didn't know how long I'd be able to keep it. I forced back the lump in my throat and smiled. Auntie, I've been eating well. Mrs. Song sighed and gently touched my cheek. Emily, how did things between you and Ethan get to this point? At that moment, my tears burst forth. The emotional wall I'd held up crumbled instantly. Yeah, how did it come to this? Was it time? Or just the way hearts change? I didn't explain much to Mrs. Song. By now, no words could really change anything. She didn't say much either, only told me to think carefully and not to wrong myself. Honestly, if things between Ethan and me had gone smoothly, it would have been fine. But life never seems to go the way we want it to. Mr. Song suddenly had a heart attack. The medical expenses were overwhelming for such an ordinary family. All their living expenses fell on Mrs. Song's shoulders alone. Ethan was always determined and hardworking. He consistently ranked at the top of his class. But on the night we both received our acceptance letters from a prestigious university, Mrs. Song smiled through tears. My child, you've made me so proud. But I'm sorry. Ethan sat on the sofa, his head down, a dark cloud hanging over him. When he finally looked up, his smile was mature, thoughtful, and unbearably heartbreaking. It's okay, Mom. I know Dad just had surgery and we don't have the money. I don't have to go to college. I'll work. I'll take care of us. He was skilled at pretending to be calm and unbothered, but the slight redness in his eyes carved itself deep into my heart. Out on the balcony in the night breeze, the silhouette of the teenage boy looked so thin and fragile. It reminded me of that night years ago. He was the one who held me up against the wind. I walked gently to his side, forced a smile, and said light-heartedly, I'm a little rich girl now. Shouldn't I repay my lifesaver? He froze for a second, then his face darkened. Emily, how could I ever take your money? Absolutely not. Back then I didn't understand. We loved each other, so why couldn't he accept my help? That was our first fight. It lasted until the moon had climbed high in the sky. In the chill of the night air, our lips trembled as we spoke. Gave in. I told myself he was just carefully guarding his pride. In truth, between his pride and me, he had already made his choice. But he had to go to college. That was non-negotiable. So I started working part-time with Ethan. First he did tutoring. Thanks to his excellent exam scores, many parents wanted to hire him. Soon he had more and more students. Of course, that kind of success made others jealous. One day, a little child cried and falsely accused him of abuse. After that, no one wanted to hire him anymore. Defeated, he clutched his lesson plans tightly in his hands, as if the entire world had turned. A glass around him. I patted his shoulder and said, "It's okay, let's go deliver food together. If that doesn't work out, we can pass out flyers." He pulled me into his arms. That faint jasmine scent that once lingered around him had long since faded, but I still remember it clearly to this day. "I'm sorry, Emily," he whispered. "I'll treasure you. I'll make it up to you." That whole summer, the ruthless sun and dripping sweat didn't feel hard to endure. Oh, on the contrary, the future Ethan promised me during that summer made me believe with all my heart. Back then, we never imagined that a love so pure and passionate would one day vanish, without a trace in the river of time. I wandered the streets alone, aimless and empty. My phone buzzed nonstop. When I checked it, I saw that the alumni group chat from school was talking about Ethan. Me. The messages came fast and heavy, but they all said the same thing. What on earth happened to the perfect couple, Emily and Ethan? Since I was in the group, no one dared to go too far with their speculation. But I didn't expect what came next. A senior actually tagged Ethan and directly said, "Some men really are just losers. They're useless and they can't stand to see others doing better than them." The chat went dead silent in an instant. Even though it was a virtual space, I could feel the cold awkwardness radiating through the screen. Of course, Ethan wouldn't reply to her. The chat sank back into silence. I bought a cup of milk tea without much thought. The streets were full of people, but I couldn't seem to hear a single sound. I'd been hungry for hours, but even eating and drinking felt weak and meaningless. Then my phone buzzed again. Someone in the group had responded to the senior. Zoe Wei sent an emoji of a sweating side-eye glance, followed by a long string of text. "Senior, maybe you misunderstood something. You don't really know Ethan. Isn't that a bit unfair of you to say? Did someone tell you something?" The senior replied quickly, "Oh, I thought it was someone else. Isn't this the infamous little green tea girl who kept clinging to a guy she knew already? Had a girlfriend." She didn't hold back at all. "Zoe, just because Ethan never called you out, doesn't mean the rest of us don't see through your little games. You love acting. I'll build you a stage myself tomorrow." Your words were sharp, but honestly, I felt like they fit Zoe's behavior perfectly. I glanced at the cloudy sky. Even the light filtering through seemed harsh. I looked down. The milk tea I had just bought was, what a coincidence, green tea flavored. I let out a bitter smile, health tears welling in the corners of my eyes. When did Zoe come between Ethan and me? Mr. Song's health had been unstable for a long time. He relied on medication just to keep things under control. Around that time, Mrs. Song fell ill too, and their financial situation worsened again. The heavens really aren't kind to me. Why is it that whenever I'm already hurting, they always seem to hit me harder? I tossed the milk tea into a nearby trash can. Just then, a car pulled up beside me. Ethan opened the door, a card in hand. His face was stone cold, seething with anger. He flung the card at my feet. "Emily Song, this is the card you gave my mom. What's the meaning of this? Is this your breakup fee?" I glanced down. It was indeed the card I had just given to Mrs. Song. I nodded, about to speak, but before I could say a word, Ethan suddenly grabbed my wrist. "Tightly. Do you think money can solve everything? I used to be his Emily. Now I was just Emily Song, no different from any random name in a crowd. 5 years may look unchanged on the surface, but everything had already fallen apart. And yet I couldn't deny it. He was still Ethan Song, the boy I once loved. No matter what lay ahead for us, I wanted to preserve the beauty of this relationship in my heart. So I explained, "Your mom has treated me better than a daughter all these years. That was just me showing her respect." He let out a cold laugh, shaking his head, his face full of contempt. "She's my mom. I'll take care of her. I don't need you to do it." "Good," I said with a nod. "Then let's just call it a breakup fee." His face turned red with anger. His eyes were filled with frustration. Emily Song, what the hell do you want? I'm running out of patience. I took a deep breath and looked up at the sky. Raindrops hit my forehead, sharp, cold, but they made me feel oddly awake. At the very least, from now on, I never want to stand in the rain again. Let's break up. My heart ached, but the heaviness in my legs felt just a bit lighter. Ethan, after 12 years, our relationship has become a burden to you. We're both exhausted. I'm willing to give you the freedom you've been longing for. The fierceness in his eyes faded, replaced by a helpless confusion. He stood frozen for a long time, then finally looked into my eyes as if searching for confirmation. You're serious? I looked at him and nodded. His expression went stiff. The corners of his lips trembled, almost imperceptibly. Emily Song, I tolerated being made a joke at the wedding, but don't keep pushing my limits. I let out a cold laugh. Limits, Ethan, what exactly are your limits? I asked the question seriously, locking my eyes on his, hoping I could find the answer. I needed in them. My limits, he repeated. Emily Song, don't you know what my limits are? Yes, I did. Maybe I hadn't understood it clearly when I was younger, but by the time we graduated, I began to realize maybe Ethan didn't mind that I was outstanding, but he couldn't handle me being more outstanding than him. After graduation, we made different choices. He wanted to stay at our university for graduate school, but given his family's financial situation, I suggested, what if I start working instead? Back then, he held my hand tightly and said firmly, no. If someone's going to work, it'll be me. You should keep studying. When he smiled and added, besides, jobs are hard to find right now. I'm worried you might not land one. I didn't think much of it then, but looking back now, wasn't there something condescending in that look of his? I'll give it a try, I told him. If I can't find a job, I'll come back and apply for grad school. Don't worry about me. I thought I was being thoughtful by reassuring him, but he just looked like he thought I was being stubborn and irrational. His brows furrowed as he stood up. Emily, why do you always refuse to listen to me? I said you wouldn't find a job, so you won't. That was when I started noticing something off in his personality. I had always done things with his best interest at heart, but somehow I always ended up being the one in the wrong. We fought for a long time that night. Neither of us was willing to back down. It ended with us yelling at each other. He smashed the teacup I gave him and stormed out. Looking at the shattered pieces on the floor, I felt like a knife had sliced a small, deep cut across my heart. I was terrified of loss. I'd already lost the people who meant the most to me once. I couldn't go through that kind of pain again. I could barely breathe, but I forced my legs to move and chased after him. Back then, my heart and eyes were filled only with that boy's figure as he walked away. I didn't notice the speeding car coming down the road. It hit me hard and threw me to the ground. Everything turned upside down. I lost consciousness. The last thing I saw was the outline of that boy's face. When I finally woke up again, Ethan was standing beside my hospital bed, staring at me. For the first time, he had red-rimmed eyes. Emily, you're finally awake. I'm so sorry. I'm really, really sorry. He gripped my right hand tightly, his knuckles white from the pressure. His face was filled with overwhelming guilt. In that moment, I suddenly realized the teacup didn't matter. What mattered was that the boy was still in front of me. Anything else could be replaced. I smiled through the bandages. Probably looked awful. It's okay. He hugged me. Let's not fight anymore, okay? Emily, you have no idea how scared I was for you. In the warmth of that moment, I found myself having a stupid thought. If I could spend my life peacefully and happily with Ethan, then I'd be willing to get hit by a car every day. He said I'm sorry over and over again. And honestly, I never blamed him. There was another person in the room, a young woman with short hair. She looked sharp, capable, and composed. Every word she said was clear and composed. I'm sorry, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Alex Sue. I was the one who accidentally hit you. What I didn't expect was that Alex would become a pivotal figure in my life. We both shared a deep interest in mechanical engineering. She invited me to start a business with her. When we discussed future prospects and direction, she laid out a detailed and flawless plan. I was genuinely intrigued. I told Ethan about it. He smiled and said, "Starting a business isn't easy." But since I was still recovering in the hospital, we didn't argue. When I began working with Alex, Ethan commented more than once, "This is just a little side project. It won't last." I didn't take it to heart. Alex had sharp market insight and I had strong execution skills. Our entrepreneurial journey wasn't smooth by any means. Sometimes we stayed up for 2 days straight just to revise a proposal overnight. But the heavens reward hard work. Slowly, things started looking up. Bit by bit, the business grew, and eventually we secured a solid place in City A. Ethan never stopped undermining me, but looking back now, maybe that's when the distance between us really began to grow. Silent departures took the place of morning kisses. My favorite pepper steak with green peppers had turned into leftovers he casually brought. Even at night, lying next to each other in bed, he always had his back to me. He said he was busy with academic research. But I was busy too, so busy I didn't have the energy to argue or even notice how far that boy had drifted from me. But if I had become ordinary, would Ethan really have returned to me with his whole heart? I didn't dare to bet on that. I used to love him deeply, but I've always been someone who considers the worst case scenario. If I made his love the meaning of my life, what would I do when he stopped loving me? I couldn't do that. Ethan isn't important anymore. I don't care about him now. So his limits, his pride as a man, I no longer feel the need to protect any of that. Emily's song, "It's been 12 years. Everyone knows we're impossible to separate. Why are you doing this? Is it really necessary? You're only making me hate you more." Hate. I laughed softly. Why would anyone want to spend their life with someone they hate? Does Zoe know? Ethan froze. Why are you bringing her up? What does she have to do with this? Ethan knows we're impossible to separate. Does Zoe know that? It was like I struck a nerve. Emily's song, "Stop dragging irrelevant people into this. If you want to break up, fine. Just don't come crawling back later." I shook my head. Voice calm. "I won't. After all these years, you should know me well enough. I never regret the decisions I make." He got into his car, slammed the door and sped off. The tires splashed dirty water all over me. Look at the man I once loved. He didn't even have the courage to admit he'd strayed in our relationship. I really should have let go of him sooner. I moved out and bought a modest place. Not too big, not too small. The neighborhood was quiet. When my senior heard about the breakup, she suggested bringing some friends over for a little housewarming. Worried I might spiral into sadness, they brought wine and cooked a few dishes in my kitchen. We sat around the dinner table, and at first, no one mentioned Ethan or me. And as time passed, they slowly realized something. I wasn't nearly as heartbroken as they had expected after ending a 12-year relationship. Honestly, I hadn't expected it either. After losing Ethan, I only felt a dull ache during the occasional lonely moment. But deep down I had long understood. Life is for living on your own terms, and my life didn't revolve around Ethan. Curiosity got the better of them. Some of my classmates finally asked, "Why did you and Ethan break up? We thought you two were really solid." My answer was simple and precise. Maybe we just stopped loving each other. Everyone was tired, and the atmosphere fell silent. Their expressions were hard to read, almost distant. But the truth was undeniable. Love isn't about acting recklessly. It's about responsibility. In love, we may grow weary, but we can't allow our hearts to wander. A person who can't stay true in love is not someone I want in my future. With my classmates' support, my mood improved a great deal. Add to that how busy I was with the business, and I quickly got used to life on my own. But Ethan didn't seem to. He showed up at my door one day, dark circles under his eyes, a trace of stubble on his face, and noticeably thinner than before. I was a little surprised. In my memory, Ethan had always been confident and full of spirit. I had never seen him this worn down. He smiled at me, that familiar sunny smile, but now it carried something mixed in, something messy and heavy. It made me uncomfortable. I felt like he was tainting the beautiful image I had of him in my memory. Emily, he said, I've got some time these days. What if we pick a new date and rebook the venue for the wedding? Don't worry, I already explained everything to our relatives and friends. They won't say anything. His tone had a hint of pleading in it. My chest tightened, but I knew we couldn't go back. Not anymore. Even now, hearing him softly call me Emily, I could still remember how he once stared at me with bloodshot eyes and spat out Emily's song like it was a curse. No need, Ethan. I've already given you your freedom. What we had was beautiful. Let's leave it in our memories. No one is truly irreplaceable. Isn't it better for us to welcome new futures separately? His eyes turned red. Emily, what happened? What went wrong between us? How did it end up like this? Yes, how did it? That's something he should be asking himself. Then just go. He grabbed my hand and shook his head. No, Emily, don't you remember? We promised to buy a big house together, to have 2 kids and live a happy life to the end. Those promises had been beautiful, but someone had broken the balance between us first. I'm not as strong as I appear. My therapist once told me I have a kind of emotional purism. If I sense that someone or something no longer truly belongs to me, I erase my mark on it. Yes, I bought the house. I treated your parents with love and respect. Kept the promises. But what about you? He stood there stunned, speechless. I looked him straight in the eyes. Do you still love me? Course I love you. I let out a bitter laugh. But do you only love me? He hesitated, guilty and silent. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. I sighed. Ethan, I don't want this to get ugly. I loved you deeply. Believe you once loved me too. But now it's time to let go. He lowered his head and walked away. His figure was still as thin as I remembered, but the fire between us had burned out. I couldn't warm him anymore. Mrs. Song called me and invited me over for dinner. After all, I had lived in their home for many years, and there were still some of my things left behind. When I arrived, the whole family was there, and so were several close relatives. At the dinner table, everyone suddenly became peacemakers, each taking their turn. Emily, sweet girl, I've always thought you were a great match for Ethan. You've grown into such a graceful and accomplished woman. Don't you think it's time to seriously consider your future? Yes, Wellnot chimed in. I remember how close you two were. Ethan already admitted the last time was his fault. Because women isn't what we all want, just a good home. Don't be too hard on the man. No matter how good your career is, nothing compares to finding a good husband. Ethan's a great guy. You two have been together for over 10 years. How can you just say break up and actually do it? You're not kids anymore. Stop being so immature. Mrs. Song held my hand inside. No matter what, all the blame lies with our Ethan. Child, if there's something you're unhappy about, just take it out on him. He won't talk back. And he just feels sorry for you. I know Ethan still loves you. Human nature really does lean towards self-preservation. No matter how much she treated me like her own daughter, she was still Ethan's mother. In the end. And as for those words from the Song family's relatives, what did they have to do with me? I had already made up my mind to cut ties cleanly. I smiled, lifted my glass, and toasted each of them one by one. Thank you all for taking care of me over the years. You probably don't know the full story between me and Ethan. But I'm not a child anymore. I have my own judgment. I'll be moving to another city for work soon. Please take care of yourselves. The relatives exchanged glances, visibly awkward. One of my aunts frowned and said, Emily, how can you say something like that? Ethan has been with you since his teens. You've held him back all these years, and now that you're doing so well, you're just abandoning him. Who do we even complain to about this? My second uncle chimed in, that's right. Don't forget, Ethan once saved your life. How can you be so ungrateful? I gave a cold laugh and turned to look at Ethan. He was already looking at me, sighing. Emily, can you really let go of 12 years of love? I smiled and raised an eyebrow at my aunt. Isn't love something that takes two people? When we first got together, if he hadn't wanted to, I couldn't have forced him into it at knife point. If Ethan feels I've wasted his time for over a decade, then hasn't he wasted mine too? You're a woman. How can you believe a woman's youth is worth less than a man's? And as for me doing well, that came from my own hard work. Ask Ethan, did he contribute anything to that? My aunt's face turned pale, ears flushed red, unable to respond. Then I turned to my second uncle. Yes, Ethan saved my life once, but I also saved Mr. Song's life. Even our biological parents can't demand we spend our entire lives repaying them. I've honored uncle and auntie like my own, and I've spent so many years with Ethan, always putting him first. My conscience is clear. My uncle looked just as uncomfortable as my aunt, if not more so. Finally, I turned a cold gaze toward Ethan. Before asking me if I can let go of the past 12 years, ask yourself, weren't you the one who gave up first? His eyes started to avoid mine. When I bought the house, you said you had research work. When I was decorating it, you said you had a conference. When I went furniture shopping, you were still too busy. Do you even realize that all of that was supposed to be our plan, not just mine? And when everything was done, you showed up just once, took a glance around and said, "Wow, Emily, you really have money," with that sarcastic tone of yours. Ethan's face turned red with embarrassment. Pressed on. Do you not remember that? He quickly shook his head, trying to explain. No, I didn't mean it that way. I was just surprised, that's all. I stood up. Then where were you on my birthday? When I set the wedding date, when I went out to pick out wedding decorations, what were you doing then? Ethan's eyes started left and right, searching for an answer, but said nothing. I gave a cold smile and pulled out the photos. Let me remind you, photo 1. Zoe sitting beside him holding a lunchbox. Ethan was feeding her pepper steak with green peppers, my favorite dish. He made it on my birthday, not for me but for another girl. Photo 2. Zoe holding his arm, gazing up at him with adoration while he grinned smugly. That was the day I set the wedding date, the same day he claimed he had an academic conference. But he was actually spending a romantic day with her at Central Park. Photo 3. Zoe and his arms, embracing him tightly. The two of them sat there with their eyes closed, smiling so brightly, so blissfully. When I was out shopping for our wedding items, you abandoned your fiancé to go to an amusement park with another girl. If I remember correctly, you kissed her on the Ferris wheel. And she didn't push you away. The room fell into silence. The Song relatives didn't dare say a word. Mr. and Mrs. Song were both glaring at Ethan, their faces dark with fury. I looked at him too. Ethan, is this what you call love? He looked painfully embarrassed, but still tried to hold his ground. You actually investigated me. I let out a sarcastic laugh. Investigate you? I was so busy I barely had time to breathe. I had no energy to go snooping. Those were photos from Zoe's public friend circle where you went, what you did, she documented it clearly. Why did Zoe post them? Simple. She wanted to make sure I knew she was a full-fledged manipulative girl who couldn't wait to replace me. But Ethan, you didn't pass the test either. You know how the saying goes, a fly doesn't land on an uncracked egg. Ethan opened his mouth but only managed to make a small, weak sound. I shook my head. Ethan, I actually wanted to let you keep a little dignity, not because I still loved you, but because I didn't want to stay in the beautiful memories I held of us. What I was respecting wasn't you. It was the 12 years of my own devotion. Ethan looked completely lost. Finally he said dryly, Emily, let me explain. I didn't mean to hurt you, I didn't doubt you, I raised my hand to stop. That's enough, you don't need to explain, it doesn't matter anymore. I turned to grab my bag when suddenly I heard a sharp slap. I looked back to see a red handprint on Ethan's face. Mrs. Song was shaking with anger. How could you treat Emily like this? I worked so hard to raise you, and this is the kind of disloyal, shameless man you've become. It was clear she was truly furious. Ethan hung his head, not daring to say a word. She scolded him for a long time before turning to me in tears, clutching my hand. Emily, please don't do this. He was wrong, he really was. If he weren't my son, I'd beat him to death myself. I hugged Mrs. Song gently. Auntie, what happened wasn't your fault. He wiped her eyes, pleading, child, please forgive Ethan, you've done so much for our family. I really don't want to see you get hurt like this. Please stay, I promise Ethan will treat you well from now on. She turned and shot him a warning glare. Ethan rushed over to apologize. I shoved him away. Auntie, there's no chance of me and Ethan being together again. Thank you for everything you've done over the years. If there's ever anything I can help with, please don't hesitate to call. I won't be changing my number. With that, I turned and went to gather my things. Ethan followed me to the room, grabbing my arm with a face full of remorse. Emily, I know I was wrong. Please don't leave me, I promise I'll never do this again. I don't even like Zoe, I swear. Can you believe me? He pulled out his phone and right in front of me deleted Zoe's WeChat and blocked her number as well. I only love you, he said sincerely. I've loved you since we were 16. Based on the many years we'd spent together, I could believe that Ethan might not have truly loved Zoe. But did he really not see through her games? Did he not realize that his ambiguous involvement with her was hurting me? Course he knew. He was addicted to the way she admired him, to how it bolstered his fragile ego. The moment he chose blurred lines and emotional betrayal, every ounce of clarity and truth from that point on became worthless to me. His indulgence, his moment of wandering. He knew it would hurt me, but he still did it anyway. There was no going back for us, not anymore. Let it go, Ethan, I said calmly. I told you before, I don't regret my decisions. I never take back my words. After packing my things, I said goodbye to Mrs. Song. Most of the relatives had already left. The living room was empty and quiet. Mrs. Song was sobbing uncontrollably, nearly collapsing to the floor. I quickly caught her. If it weren't for you, your uncle would have been long gone. Our family wouldn't have had these good years either. It's all Ethan's fault, every bit of it. Please forgive him, I'm begging you. Just take it as a favor to me. I gently wiped her tears and said softly, Auntie, neither you nor the Song family owes me anything. The warmth you once gave me, I'll never forget it for the rest of my life. I walked out of the Song house with my things. The moment the door closed behind me, tears rolled down my cheeks. From this moment on, Emily's Song, you're on your own again. I moved to another city and quickly got used to my new life. My senior kept in touch often. Every now and then she'd tease me, saying things like, oh Emily, you're really pitiful. Well, nothing left but money, huh? But beyond the jokes, she also told me many other things. After we broke up, Ethan didn't end up with Zoe either. He got into a huge fight with her and said some very harsh things. Zoe gave up on him. After that, apparently, Zoe had some psychological issues. Normal guys didn't like her type, those obsessed with men who were already taken. She fell for another grad student. But he was already married. Unfortunately, she seemed to find confidence in how things had gone with Ethan, so she repeated the same tactics. We messaged the married man constantly, tried to hang out with him, flirted relentlessly. But this time, the man's wife wasn't someone to mess with. Every seductive photo Zoe had sent, every suggestive message, his wife printed them all out and posted them across the neighborhood where Zoe lived. She even put up banners and used a loudspeaker to blast recordings for 8 hours a day. Unit 1, 3rd floor, apartment 2. Mr. and Mrs. Joe, their daughter Zoe, fell madly in love with my husband at first sight, and wouldn't stop chasing him. I wish them happiness and hereby step aside. In front of all the neighbors, Zoe's father slapped her hard across the face. Word of it spread fast. Zoe withdrew from school. I heard that her whole family moved away. No one knew where they went. 12 years of love isn't just black or white. There were beautiful moments and there was pain. As for the bright-spirited boy I once loved, he had walked out of my life, but I would still move forward, always toward the light, even if I walked alone. As for Ethan, even though I went out of my way to avoid hearing news about him, I eventually heard years later that he was still alone. But what does it matter? Love that comes too late is worth even less than weeds by the roadside.